The first time I felt his eyes on me, I was bent over the stone steps, scrubbing mud from the Alpha's doorstep like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. A maid in the Alpha's house was a nobody, a shadow that passed unnoticed, useful only if she stayed invisible. I had mastered invisibility at least. I thought I had. But when I looked up that night, the storm clouds thick over the moon, he was there. Watching me, I told myself it was nothing. Just the Alpha checking his territory, making sure his household hadn't slipped into chaos. But the weight of his gaze lingered even after he'd gone. It clung to my skin like the damp night air. My name is Alara. No one says it aloud here. To the others in the pack, I'm just the maid. To myself, I'm something worse. A liar, a coward, a woman carrying a secret that could destroy me. The secret shifts inside me even now, small but growing, pressing its existence into my every breath. The child doesn't belong to me alone, though I wish it did. And if the Alpha ever discovered the truth, I don't know whether he'd kill me or protect me. The Alpha's estate was a place of echoes and shadows. Stone walls older than memory, great timber beams blackened with smoke, floors that creaked like they remembered every step that had ever walked them. By day, the house was busy with the footsteps of warriors, with the sharp voices of she-wolves tending to the Alpha's affairs. By night, it felt like a haunted cathedral, and I moved through it with quiet, practiced care. My days were endless circles of work, polishing, cooking, mending, sweeping. No one thanked me. No one noticed. Except sometimes. He did. Alpha Kalen. Even saying his name in my mind was dangerous. His presence filled every corner of this place, even when he wasn't here. The pack adored him, feared him, bent their necks to him. He was the kind of leader who inspired loyalty and blood. The kind of man who could tear apart an enemy with his hands and then sit down to break bread with his people as if nothing had happened. And I, just a maid with a swelling secret under my ribs, was nothing to him. Nothing. At least. That's what I told myself every time my eyes betrayed me and found him across the courtyard. Every time his shadow passed too near and my heart stumbled in my chest. Lately my dreams have been restless. Strange. They tangled themselves into my sleep like vines, pulling me into forests I didn't recognize, showing me wolves with eyes that glowed like lanterns in the dark. Sometimes I saw a child standing, among them small and fragile, but every wolf bowed to it as if it were royalty. I always woke sweating, clutching my stomach. I couldn't tell anyone. Dreams meant things in a pack. Dreams were omens. And my dreams felt like prophecy. It was late. The night it began to unravel. I had stayed behind to finish the kitchen work, scrubbing pots until my fingers stung. The other maids had already gone, their laughter trailing down the hall like cruel little knives. I preferred the silence, but when I stepped out into the courtyard, the silence wasn't empty. The wind had shifted. I could feel it even before I saw anything. The trees bordering the estate seemed to lean closer, their black branches whispering secrets to each other. The torches sputtered low, their flames struggling. My heart picked up, thudding in my ears. And then I saw it. A shadow at the edge of the woods. Too large, too still to be just another tree. I froze. At first, I thought it was one of the guards, but no. Guards didn't have eyes that glowed silver. My breath caught in my throat. I knew what I was seeing. A wolf, not one of ours. A rogue. It stood there unblinking, watching me, not attacking, not moving, just watching. The way the Alpha had the night I scrub at his doorstep. For a moment, I thought my knees would give out. I pressed my hand to my stomach instinctively, shielding the small life inside me. The wolf's gaze followed the movement, and for one chilling heartbeat, I swore it understood. Then the air shifted again. A growl, deep and furious, rolled across the courtyard from behind me. The rogue wolf vanished back into the woods, swallowed whole by the darkness. I turned. Alpha Kalen stood in the torchlight, his shoulders heaving, his eyes burning like fire. He hadn't shifted, but the wolf in him was so close to the surface it made my skin prickle. His gaze cut to my hand on my stomach, then back to my face. He didn't say a word, but in his silence I felt the promise of something I wasn't ready to face, something that would change everything. And for the first time, I wondered if the secret I carried had already been discovered. The morning after that night in the courtyard, the house felt different. Or maybe it was just me. I moved through the halls with my usual broom in hand, but every sound seemed sharper, every shadow deeper. The scrape of chairs in the dining room, the shuffle of boots across stone, the low growl of a warrior laughing with another. It all pressed against my nerves. My eyes flicked toward the windows too often, as though the rogue's glowing eyes might reappear on the other side of the glass. I wanted to believe it had been a trick of the light, or my imagination running wild after too many sleepless nights. But the Alpha had seen it too. I could still hear that growl in my bones, low and protective, directed not at me but for me. And I could still feel the weight of his gaze when he caught me, clutching my stomach. The whispers started that day. At first I thought I imagined them. 2 she-wolves bent over their washing, voices lowered but sharp, their eyes cutting toward me when they thought I wasn't looking. A guard muttering something to another as I passed with a tray of bread. A cook who suddenly fell silent the moment I stepped into the kitchen. I had been invisible before. Now, I was something else. Something they were watching. By mid-morning, the feeling gnawed at me so badly I dropped a bucket of water across the flagstones. The splash echoed, and every head in the courtyard turned. My cheeks burned hot as I scrambled to mop it up, but the sting wasn't just humiliation. It was the realization that my invisibility was gone. The Alpha's presence was heavier too. He was everywhere that day, passing through the corridor while I scrubbed the stairs, appearing in the kitchens as I cut vegetables, though he had no reason to be there, pausing in the courtyard just as I carried linens to the line, his eyes following me across the yard. I told myself it was coincidence, but when I felt the brush of his aura and Alpha's aura, thick and commanding, my heart stumbled. That night, as I folded sheets in the servants' quarters, another maid leaned closer. Her eyes glittered with malice, her voice a whisper sharp enough to cut. "You think we don't see it? The way he looks at you. Don't get too comfortable. Alpha Kalen doesn't keep strays for long." The others snickered. I forced my face blank, my hands steady, but inside, fear coiled like smoke. Sleep brought no peace. The dreams returned stronger. The forest loomed larger, the wolves circling closer. Their eyes gleamed like moons, and this time, when I saw the child standing among them, I realized it wasn't just any child. It was mine. The wolves bowed, their heads low, their bodies trembling as if the small figure commanded them. I tried to run to the child, but the forest pulled me back. And then came the howl, long, mournful, echoing through the trees. A howl I knew. His howl. I woke with tears drying on my face, and a terror I couldn't shake. The next day, I tried to cling to my routine, desperate for normalcy. Scrubbing, polishing, folding, sweeping. If I kept moving, maybe the whispers would fade. Maybe the Alpha's gaze would slide off me the way it used to. But nothing was normal anymore. In the kitchens, a loaf of bread split open to reveal a black feather tucked inside. An omen, one of the cooks muttered, though she wouldn't meet my eyes when I asked what it meant. On the stairs, I nearly slipped when water pooled where no one had been. My hand caught the rail in time, but the sound of laughter from the shadows below, made my stomach twist. Even the house itself seemed to breathe unease, doors creaking when no one touched them, windows rattling though the air was still by evening. I was raw with nerves. It was then I saw him again. Not the Alpha, though I had felt his presence near all day, but the shadow from the woods. The rogue. I was gathering firewood just beyond the courtyard wall when the hair on my arms rose. The forest was too quiet. The birds had gone silent. The wind stilled. And then, between the trees, I saw them. Silver eyes. They burned in the dusk, fixed on me. No sound, no movement, just that terrible, patient watching. I stumbled back, the bundle of wood scattering from my arms. My hand flew to my stomach, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Then came the snap of a branch behind me. I whirled, ready to scream, and found myself face to face with Alpha Kalen. His eyes weren't silver. They were fire. Fierce, furious, searching. He scanned the tree line. Then me, his jaw tight. What did you see? His voice was rough, commanding. I shook my head, my breath stuttering. Nothing, just shadows. But the lie was thin. His eyes narrowed, and for one terrifying moment, I thought he might demand the truth. Instead, he stepped closer, his presence wrapping around me like a storm. Stay inside the walls. Do you understand? Don't set foot out here alone again. I nodded, unable to speak. He lingered a moment longer, his gaze falling once more to my stomach before he turned back toward the house. I stood frozen, the forest. At my back, the Alpha's warning in my ears, and the truth I couldn't tell clawing at my chest. Because it wasn't just shadows. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that whatever hunted me in those woods wasn't finished. Silence fell abruptly, oppressive and absolute. The forest seemed to exhale, releasing its tension. I sank to my knees, gasping, gripping the Alpha's arm as he collapsed beside me. He was bloodied, scarred, yet alive. I pressed my forehead to his chest, feeling the rise and fall of his breath. "It's over," I whispered, though part of me wondered if that was true. He shook his head slightly, eyes closing. "Not yet," he murmured, voice rough with exhaustion. "But we survived. That's what matters." Tears burned my eyes. Relief, fear, exhaustion, and love collided, overwhelming me. I pressed my hand to the child, feeling life, hope, and the impossible bond that had carried us through the darkness. "I thought we'd lost everything," I admitted, voice breaking. "You didn't," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "You held on. You fought. You saved us." I looked up at him, seeing the man behind the Alpha, the protector, the lover, the one who had risked everything for me and the child. "We're still alive," I whispered, "and we're together." He tilted my chin gently, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Together," he echoed, and for the first time I allowed myself to believe it. The aftermath was quiet but heavy. The clearing was scarred, shadows lingered at the edges, and we were battered, bruised, but unbroken. I realized that everything had changed, our love, our bond, our destiny. The trials had left marks, but also clarity. We belonged together, and nothing could undo that dot as the moonlight touched our faces. I felt the child stir again, life and promise wrapped in the soft rhythm of a heartbeat. I pressed a hand to my belly, smiling through tears. "We made it," I whispered. The Alpha pulled me close, lips brushing my temple. "Yes," he murmured. "We made it. And whatever comes next, we face it together." I nodded, resting my head against him, feeling the raw, undeniable truth of our survival, our love, and the bond that could not be broken even at destiny's edge. The forest was quiet now, almost painfully so. The battle had passed, leaving only the faint hum of life, the rustle of leaves, the whisper of wind, the distant call of night creatures. The shadows that had once threatened to consume everything lingered no longer, though their memory clung to me like a second skin. I sat on the edge of the clearing, the child resting lightly against me in a soft cradle of warmth, feeling the tiny, insistent heartbeat beneath my hands. Every breath, every shift of life within me, reminded me of what had been risked, what had been fought for, and what had been irrevocably changed. The Alpha knelt beside me, fingers brushing over mine, every touch grounding me in a way that words could never fully capture. He was tired, bruised, battered, and yet unbowed. His amber eyes held a quiet intensity, the kind that spoke of battles survived, secrets shared, and love tested against the edge of darkness. I leaned against him, drawing strength from the warmth of his body. For a moment, there was only us, no shadows, no enemies, no fear. Just the pulse of life, the fragile thread that had carried us through everything. "It's finally over," I whispered, voice trembling. "Over but not forgotten," he replied, eyes scanning the clearing, still alert, still watchful. "Every scar we bear, every choice we made, it's part of us now." I nodded. I thought of the pain, the fear, the nights I had spent alone, trembling, clinging to hope. I thought of the moments of forbidden closeness, the magnetic pull that had defied logic, the lies we had both told ourselves and each other, and the fragile trust we had rebuilt in the aftermath of chaos. I lost. So much, I admitted, voice barely audible. I lost sleep, safety, illusions about what I thought life could be. I lost peace of mind. But I gained you, and this child, and a truth I could never have imagined. He pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead, a promise without words. "We both lost," he murmured, "but what we've gained is stronger than anything the darkness could ever touch. Love, loyalty, hope. And this life we protect." The forest seemed to exhale around us, the night settling into a rhythm that was almost peaceful. I let myself reflect on everything, the fear, the danger, the pull between us that had been irresistible, terrifying, and unforgettable. Every memory of trembling alone or clutching at him in secret now felt like part of a tapestry that had woven us into something unbreakable. Yet even in the quiet, I understood that some things would never return to what they had been. The house was gone. Shadows had been vanquished, but the cost lingered in every bruise, every memory, every echo of terror. We were survivors, changed, hardened, but also bound. The child shifted again, tiny fingers brushing my hand, reminding me of the future we carried together. I smiled softly. "We'll protect them," I whispered, almost to myself. "No matter what comes next." He nodded, eyes softening as they met mine. "No matter what," he echoed, and I believed him. We rose together, moving slowly through the remnants of the forest. The moonlight painted silver streaks on the broken branches and scorched earth, a quiet reminder of the darkness we had endured. For a long moment we didn't speak, letting the silence fill the spaces between us heavy with unspoken words. Forgiveness, and the quiet power of a bond that had survived hell itself. Finally, I asked, "Do you think it will ever truly end?" He paused, jaw tightening, then exhaled slowly. "Endings are illusions. Life keeps moving. Danger keeps lurking. Shadows keep waiting. But as long as we face them together, it doesn't matter. We endure. We survive. And we love even at the edge of everything." His words were a balm, a promise, and a warning all at once. I leaned against him, closing my eyes, letting the truth of his presence wash over me. We had survived the darkness, but it had left its mark on us, on the child, and on the path we would walk from here forward. I thought of the prophecies, the bloodlines, the destiny that had seemed impossible. Somehow, through fear, through battle, through temptation and desire, we had become part of something larger than ourselves. Our bond had reached its final form, not perfect, not free of scars, but eternal in its intensity. I never imagined. This, I whispered. Not the danger, not the love, not the... all of it. You imagined it. He corrected softly. Every moment you doubted yourself, every time you feared, every time you hoped. It all led us here. To this. And in that instant I understood the depth of our connection. It was more than attraction, more than protection, more than love. It was destiny, entwined with blood and spirit, forged in fire and fear, and tempered by every choice we had made along the way. The night stretched on, shadows receding further, the world around us quiet and watchful. We sat together, the child nestled safely between us, and allowed ourselves the rare luxury of peace. There were no enemies now. There were no lies left to untangle. Only the lingering echoes of what had been endured, and the quiet promise of what could come next. I rested my head against the Alpha's chest one last time, listening to the rhythm of his heartbeat, feeling the warmth of life, of love, of survival. The world had tested us in every way imaginable, and we had answered. We had survived. Together, and as the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, I whispered a final vow, not of fear, not of battle, but of love. We endure. We protect. We live. And nothing will ever take this from us. The Alpha's hand found mine, squeezing gently. Forever, he said, his voice low, fierce, an uncheckable dot, and for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The forest held its breath, the night released its shadows, and the echoes of what we had survived lingered, a haunting, beautiful reminder of love, loss, courage, and destiny. We had faced the abyss. We had faced ourselves. And we had emerged, bound forever, scarred but unbroken, ready to face whatever came next. I thought I could ignore it, pretend that life inside the Alpha's estate would smooth itself out again if I kept my head low, my eyes down, my hands busy. But the world had shifted the night I saw that rogue wolf in the trees, and no amount of sweeping or scrubbing could sweep away the feeling that something was watching me. It began with the marks. I noticed them as I carried water from the well at dawn. 3 claw-shaped grooves scratched deep into the wooden bucket I had left there overnight. They hadn't been there the day before. Too precise to be an accident. Too deliberate to be anything but a message. I ran my thumb over them, the grooves rough beneath my skin, and felt a tremor race through me. Wolves marked territory. Wolves marked prey. But who or what was marking me? Later that day, in the marketplace just beyond the pack's walls, I heard it. At first, it was just the usual chaos, merchants calling out prices, women haggling over meat, children darting between stalls. But as I passed, carrying a basket of herbs for the kitchen, a hush seemed to follow me like a shadow. A pair of old women bent together, whispering. A hunter muttered to another, his eyes cutting toward me before he looked away. I caught only fragments, half-heard words swallowed by the crowd. Doesn't belong. Alpha's eyes on her. The child. My grip on the basket tightened until the handles bit into my palms. The words weren't clear, but the meaning was. They were talking about me. About my secret. I hurried through the square, heat crawling up my neck. But as I passed one stall, an old apothecary who sold charms and herbs, A withered hand shot out, catching my wrist. Her eyes, clouded and strange, pinned me where I stood. Her voice was a rasp, but her words struck clean. You can't hide from what's coming. Blood calls to blood. The forest wants what belongs to it. I froze. My heart thundered so loud I thought she must hear it. I don't know what you mean, I whispered. Her mouth twisted, half smile, half grimace. You will. Then she let me go as suddenly as she'd grabbed me, turning back to her bundles of dried flowers as though I were nothing. I stumbled away, the echo of her words chasing me all the way back to the gates. That night, the animals grew restless. The hounds in the kennels barked and snapped at nothing, their eyes wild, their fur standing on end. Horses whinnied and kicked at their stalls, ears pinned back. Even the ravens that perched on the high beams of the estate cawed sharply before taking to the sky in a black flurry. I tried to sleep, but the air itself felt alive, buzzing with a tension I couldn't name. And when I finally drifted off, the dreams returned. The forest, the wolves, the child. But this time, the dream was different. The wolves didn't bow. They circled closer, their teeth bared, their eyes burning. The child stood in the center, small hands reaching for me. But every time I tried to run to it, the ground shifted beneath me. Then a shadow stepped from the trees, taller than any wolf, darker than the night itself. It raised a hand and carved across its palm were the same 3 marks I had seen on the bucket that morning. I woke gasping. The image burned into my mind. The following day, I found a note. It was tucked beneath the linens I was folding in the servants' quarters. A slip of parchment, no larger than my palm, the letters jagged as if scratched by a trembling hand. He knows. Protect the child. That was all. My knees weakened as I sank onto the bed, the note clutched between my fingers. He knows. Who? The alpha? The rogue? Someone else entirely? I looked around the room, half expecting someone to step out of the shadows. But I was alone. The note might have been a warning or a trap, and I had no way of knowing which. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I jumped at every sound, flinched at every movement. The whispers in the halls grew sharper, cutting into me with invisible knives. The other servants glanced at me as if they were waiting for me to fall, or to be dragged away. By evening, I could barely stand the pressure of it all. I stepped out into the courtyard, desperate for air, the cool night pressing against my fevered skin. The torches flickered low, shadows curling along the stone walls. For a moment, I almost felt peace until I heard it. A whisper, low, right behind me. I spun, but no one was there. Only the empty courtyard and the heavy silence of night. My breath hitched. The whisper had been so close, so clear, I could still feel the brush of it against my ear. Run. That single word echoed inside me, chilling me more than the cold ever could. I clutched my stomach, my heart hammering. Whoever or whatever was sending me these warnings, it wasn't finished. And as I stood there in the shadows, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just the rogue in the woods I had to fear. The danger was already inside these walls. The note haunted me all night. I hid it under my mattress. But even as I lay staring at the ceiling, the words burned in my mind. He knows. Protect the child. Every creak of the old house made me flinch. Every whisper of wind against the shutters felt like someone breathing at my ear. I was certain that if I closed my eyes, I'd wake to find the note had multiplied, scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, all bearing the same dreadful warning. But dawn came, and with it, silence. No new notes, no new marks, just the routine of another day. I tried to let the rhythm of chores steady me, fetching water, folding linens, scrubbing pots. But my mind was restless, darting like a sparrow in a cage. And beneath everything pulsed that growing awareness, the feeling of being watched. By midday, I could stand it no longer. I slipped out through the back courtyard, telling myself I only needed fresh air. The forest loomed just beyond the walls, dark and inviting. I shouldn't have gone. The Alpha's warning from the other night echoed in my ears. Stay inside the walls. Don't set foot out here alone again. But something tugged at me, gentle and insistent, like a string tied around my heart, pulling me toward the trees. So I stepped beyond the gates. The air changed immediately. Cooler, sharper, tinged with the scent of pine and earth. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. But it didn't feel empty. It felt alive. I told myself I would only gather herbs from the edge. Something I could use as an excuse if I were caught. But the moment I bent to pluck a sprig of sage, the hair on the back of my neck rose. I wasn't alone. I straightened slowly, my eyes scanning the trees. At first, I saw nothing, just shadows stretching long in the afternoon light. But then one shadow moved. My breath caught. It wasn't the rogue I'd seen before. This figure stood upright, half hidden by the trunks, tall and broad-shouldered, his outline blurred by the shifting leaves. I couldn't make out his face. Only the sense of him, stillness heavy as stone, presence so intense it made my pulse stumble. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to retreat into the safety of the walls. But I couldn't. My feet rooted to the ground, my eyes locked on that shadow. The pull was magnetic, dangerous. For a long moment we simply stood there, staring. I didn't know if he was man or wolf, enemy or guardian, but I felt him in my very bones, as though an invisible thread connected us. And then, just as suddenly, he was gone. The leaves stirred, and the shadow melted into the forest, leaving nothing but silence behind. I stumbled back to the estate, my heart racing. Every step, I expected him to reappear, to step from the trees and claim me. But he didn't. Single quotes T. By the time I reached the courtyard, the world felt too bright, too ordinary, as if I had imagined the whole encounter. But I knew I hadn't. That evening, as I scrubbed the long wooden tables in the dining hall, I couldn't stop thinking about him. His stillness, his presence, the way the air had shifted around him, alive and charged, like before a storm. And the strangest part, how my fear had tangled with something else, curiosity. A pull I couldn't deny. I thought perhaps the unease would fade with time. But later that night, it returned. I was carrying linens down the dim corridor when I caught a flicker of movement in the corner of my vision. I turned, expecting another servant, but no one was there. Only the flickering torchlight painting long shadows across the walls. I stood still, straining to listen. For a moment, there was nothing. Then soft, almost inaudible, the sound of footsteps. Not hurried, not stumbling, measured, deliberate. I spun again, but the corridor was empty. My skin prickled as I clutched the linens tighter. He was here. Not in the forest this time. Here, inside these very walls. The rest of the night passed in a haze of nerves. Every time I turned a corner, I expected him. Every time I blinked, I thought I saw him in the shadows. But he never appeared fully. Only traces. A brush of air as if someone had just passed. A fleeting shape in the torchlight. A presence that lingered too long. By the time I collapsed into my bed, exhaustion pulled me under. But even in sleep, I felt it. That shadow in the dark. That presence too near. That invisible thread pulling tighter and tighter around me. When morning came, I rose with more questions than answers. Who was he? The rogue from the woods, come closer. A protector? A threat? And why, when every instinct told me to fear him, did part of me long to see him again? The Alpha's warning echoed in my head, but another truth had taken root. I was no longer just afraid. I was curious, and curiosity was its own kind of danger. The morning began like any other chores, the clang of pots in the kitchens, servants bustling about. But I carried with me the heavy secret of the night before. The shadow that had lingered in the halls, the almost footsteps that had followed me. I told myself it was exhaustion, imagination playing tricks. And yet, when I carried water to the courtyard, I felt the air shift as if someone unseen had stepped into the world beside me. The courtyard was empty, save for the vines clinging to the stone walls and the distant sound of the smithy's hammer. Still, I froze mid-step, the handle of the bucket slick in my grip. And then I saw him. Not as a shadow this time. A man. He stood just beyond the archway, half-shrouded in the drape of ivy. The light caught only part of his sharp jawline, dark hair falling into his face, shoulders broad beneath a simple shirt that looked almost torn from long travel. But it wasn't his appearance that stilled me. It was his presence. It pressed against me like a storm front, heavy and charged. My pulse leapt in answer, though I didn't understand why. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered before I even thought to. My voice sounded small against the silence. He didn't move closer. He didn't move at all. Only watched me, eyes dark and unreadable from where he stood. And yet I felt him. Felt the weight of his gaze like a hand brushing over my skin. "Neither should you," he said, his voice low, rough-edged, carrying something that wasn't quite threat. The words sent a shiver straight down my spine. I should have run. I should have screamed for the guards. Instead, I set the bucket down carefully, almost reverently, as though every movement mattered under his watch. "Who are you?" My question was sharper than I intended. For a moment, silence stretched between us, taut as wire. Then, a faint curve touched his lips, not quite a smile, not quite mockery. "Someone you've already been warned about." My breath caught. The note. "He knows. Protect the child." Was it about him? "You shouldn't follow me," he added. The strangest part, I hadn't taken a step toward him. And yet the way he said it made me realize I wanted to. My body leaned forward without my permission, drawn by something unseen. His eyes, now I saw them clearly. They glowed faintly, not with the silver blue of wolves under moonlight, but darker. Amber, like fire caught in glass. Unnatural, beautiful, dangerous. Before I could answer, a noise cracked the spell. The sharp bark of orders from the training yard. A guard's laugh carrying over the walls. I turned my head instinctively. When I looked back, the archway was empty. He was gone. The rest of the day passed in a daze. My hands scrubbed and folded and fetched, but my mind wasn't in them. It was in the courtyard. On him. The way his voice had settled into me like a secret. The way my body had leaned toward him against every warning, every instinct, and most of all how part of me longed to see him again. That night, I dreamt of amber eyes in the darkness, of whispers threading through the air, words I couldn't quite hear, of a hand reaching out, almost touching mine before the shadows swallowed it whole. I woke tangled in my sheets, breathless, ashamed that I wasn't just afraid. I was drawn. The next evening, I lingered longer in the courtyard than I needed to. I told myself it was only for the cool air after a day by the fires. But deep down, I knew I was waiting. And he came. The ivy rustled, and there he was again, as if the shadows themselves had carried him here. Neither of us spoke at first. We only watched. This time he did step closer, just a pace, no more. It was enough. The air between us tightened, thrumming with something I didn't dare name. "Why me?" I whispered finally. He tilted his head slightly, like he was studying something fragile or dangerous. "You already know," he said. But I didn't. Or maybe I did, and I refused to let the thought surface. We stood in silence until my heart ached with the weight of it. Until the sound of approaching footsteps scattered everything. He slipped back into shadow with a swiftness that left the courtyard bare. Ordinary, as if he'd never been there at all. But I felt him. Even after the footsteps passed. Even as the stars wheeled overhead. Even when I returned to my narrow bed. His presence clung to me like smoke. His voice curled in my thoughts. His eyes followed me into sleep. When dawn came, I knew one thing with dreadful certainty. It wasn't just fear. I felt any more. It was want. And want was more dangerous than any wolf that stalked the woods. Sleep gave me no peace. Night after night. I dreamt of him. Those burning amber eyes. That voice like smoke clinging to my ribs. Sometimes he stood close enough that I felt the brush of his breath. Other times I saw him far off in the woods. Half wolf, half man, beckoning. Always, I woke gasping, my heart aching with a mix of dread and longing. And always, when I opened my eyes, the shadows in my room felt too heavy. As though someone lingered just beyond the reach of light. By day, I tried to bury myself in chores, scrubbing stone floors until my knees went raw, hanging sheets until my arms burned. But the world around me no longer obeyed the laws it once had. Candles flickered violently when I passed, though no draft stirred. Dogs snarled low at me in the yard, hackles raised, then whimpered as though ashamed. Even the other servants noticed. "Did you hear the shutters last night?" One whispered while we peeled apples. They banged like the wind was howling, but there was no wind. Their eyes slid toward me, wary, as though I might be the cause. The worst came when I carried bread to the cellar. The air was damp and still, heavy with yeast and earth. But halfway down the steps, my foot caught on nothing. Nothing at all. I lurched forward, the basket flying from my arms, loaves scattering across the stone. My hands scraped raw as I caught myself. And just as I lifted my head, I saw it, carved into the cellar wall. A symbol. A crescent moon slashed through with a line, jagged and angry. Fresh, as though etched only hours before. I stumbled back, my skin prickling. It hadn't been there yesterday. That night, my dream changed. This time, I wasn't in my bed or wandering the forest. I was in the Alpha's hall. Only it wasn't as I knew it. The torches burned black. Shadows slithered along the walls like living things. And in the center, the man stood half in light, half in dark. Behind him, something loomed, enormous, hulking. A wolf, I thought, but not like any I'd seen. Its eyes were endless, glowing pits. The man turned his head slowly, his gaze locking on me. "You can't keep running," he said. I woke screaming. By now, whispers had spread through the house. The maid with the haunted look, the child who cried at night, as though sensing something unseen. I tried to ignore them, tried to remind myself I was safe within these walls, watched over by guards, by the Alpha's own order, that safety was an illusion, because 2 nights later, the world itself seemed to tear at its seams. It began with the child. I had put him down to sleep, his soft curls damp with sweat, his little hand clutching at mine before finally letting go. Exhausted, I sat by the hearth, mending a tear in one of the Alpha's shirts. The fire crackled gently, the house quiet, until it WASN T. Until the shutters upstairs slammed open with a crash. Until the dogs, Outside erupted into a frenzy, barking and howling as though they faced death itself. Until the baby screamed, a sound so sharp, so full of terror, that my blood iced over. I raced up the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding. The room was freezing. The cradle rocked violently, though no one touched it. And in the corner, the shadows gathered. Thick, unnatural, shifting like smoke. I froze, clutching the doorframe. And then the shadows parted, just enough to reveal eyes, amber. Burning him, watching double coot stop. My voice tore from me without thought. You're frightening him. The shadows stilled. The baby's cries quieted to sobs. And the man stepped forward, more visible than he had ever been before. Tall. Wild. The very air around him humming like a storm about to break. He looked at me, not the child. And in that gaze I felt the pull again, magnetic, merciless. I warned you, he said, before I could answer. The door behind me slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. The candle on the table guttered out. And suddenly, the shadows surged toward me. Not him this time, but something else. Something colder. Hungrier. It wrapped around my arms. My throat, dragging me back into the room as I gasped for breath. I clutched at the air, at the cradle, at anything to anchor myself. And for the first time, I understood whatever had haunted me was not only him. There were others, and they wanted me. I thrashed against the pull, the baby's cries rising again in terror. My vision blurred. The room tilted. The shadows closed tighter. And then heat. Blazing heat. Arms caught me, strong and unyielding, dragging me away from the icy clutch. A voice snarled low, animalistic, vibrating through my bones. Not her. The shadows recoiled like smoke fleeing flame, and I knew whose arms I was in. The man. The stranger. The danger. My knees buckled. My breath heaved. But even as fear coursed through me, another truth carved itself into my chest. He had saved me, even if he was the reason I was in danger at all. I should have run from him that night. I should have screamed for the guards, told the Alpha what I had seen, begged to be sent away, but I didn't, because his arms had held me when the shadows tried to tear me apart, because his voice, low, furious, had driven them back, because for one terrible, traitorous heartbeat, I had felt safe in his hold, safer than I ever had in this house. And that safety was the most dangerous thing of all. The next day, I moved through the halls like a ghost. The other servants avoided my eyes, whispering behind their hands. But I kept seeing him in every shadow, not with fear, with hunger. And late that night, when the house finally slept, I found myself drifting to the courtyard, the same place we had first spoken. I told myself it was madness, that I would find nothing but silence and ivy. But he was there. As though he had been waiting. You shouldn't be here, he said again, voice quiet, almost weary, the same words as before. But this time I heard something else beneath them. Not warning, not anger, longing. Neither should you, I whispered back. That faint, sharp smile curved his lips again, and my heart betrayed me. It leapt. We stood in silence, the night thick around us. Then he stepped closer. Not much, just a pace, but I felt it ripple through me like a tide. Those shadows, I said softly, my voice trembling. What were they? His jaw tightened. Not for you to worry about. My throat closed on the memory of it. I nearly lost my breath. You won't. His words were sharp, certain. Not while I'm near. The truth hung between us. He was danger. Yet he was also my shield. And I didn't know how to separate the two. Why me? The question broke from me before I could stop it. Why are they here? Around me? Around the child? What do you want from us? For the first time, his eyes softened. I don't want, he said slowly, as though each word cost him. I need. The way he said it low, ragged, made my skin prickle. Need what? But he only shook his head, as if the truth was too heavy to give. Instead, he glanced toward the house. They'll be looking for you. He turned, slipping back into shadow. But I couldn't let him go. Wait. He stopped. I didn't move closer, though every fiber of me wanted to. Instead, I said quietly, "Thank you for saving me." He stood in stillness a long moment, then inclined his head once, and then he was gone. The nights that followed blurred together. I told myself I wouldn't go searching for him again. But somehow, he found me each time. Sometimes in the courtyard, sometimes on the path to the well. Once, even in the empty kitchens, his form half hidden in shadow as I kneaded bread. We didn't speak much. And yet, with every glance, every brief exchange, something coiled tighter between us. Once, when I stumbled on the path, his hand shot out to catch me. Calloused, warm. The touch was brief. He withdrew as though burned, but it left my skin tingling long after. Another night. I confessed I hadn't slept without dreams since the first time I saw him. He looked at me then with an expression that stole my breath, raw, pained, like a man staring at something he both craved and feared. That the bond between us wasn't just mine. The child began to quiet when he was near, even without seeing him fully, as if sensing something unseen. The baby stilled in his presence. That was when I realized I wasn't imagining it. It wasn't only me he was tied to. It was us. And yet dread lingered, because I didn't know what he was. Not truly. I caught fragments when he let his guard slip. The way his eyes glowed when anger flared. The way animals in the yard bristled when he passed unseen. The way he moved too fast, too silent, too sure. I told myself not to ask, that I didn't want to know. But I did. It happened on the 7th night. I found him standing at the edge of the courtyard, his face upturned to the full moon. The silver light washed over him, sharpening the lines of his jaw, catching in the strands of his dark hair. He looked carved of shadow and fire. My breath hitched. And then, before my eyes, he changed. Not fully, not into beast or man alone, but his eyes blazed brighter. His teeth lengthened into something sharp, predatory. His hands curled into claws that caught the moonlight. And the sound low, guttural rolled from his chest, more growl than human. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. He turned at the noise. His face, half wolf, half man, locked onto mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. The night held its breath. Then he whispered my name, in that voice I would know in any form. And I understood, with a certainty that made my knees weak. He wasn't just a man. He wasn't just danger. He was something else entirely. Something the world had never prepared me for. I didn't sleep after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing in the moonlight, half shadow, half wolf, his teeth catching the glow, his eyes burning like embers. And worse, I heard my name on his lips, spoken through that inhuman growl. It should have broken me with terror, should have driven me into the Alpha's hall to confess everything. But it didn't. It left me trembling, not with fear, but with a pull I couldn't explain. I avoided the courtyard the next day. My hands shook as I carried laundry, as I stirred pots, as I soothed the baby's cries. But I couldn't shake him. His image clung to me like smoke. His voice echoed through every silent moment. and when I closed my eyes for the briefest rest, I dreamt of him again. Only this time, he wasn't a shadow. He was watching me from across a great river, his form shifting man to wolf, wolf to man, while his eyes never left mine. I woke with tears on my face, not knowing whether they were born of longing or dread. That evening, he came again. I felt him before I saw him, heat pressing against my skin. The air thickening, my pulse rising like it always did. I froze where I stood, clutching the edge of a basket. "You saw," he said quietly. Stepping into the light, I couldn't answer. My throat was too tight, my breath too shallow. "You're afraid." Not a question, a truth. "Yes," I whispered, his jaw clenched. "Good." That word struck me like a blow. "Good," I demanded, my voice sharp with something between fury and hurt. "It will keep you alive." His eyes flickered amber before settling back to dark. "You should fear me. You should fear everything tied to me." I searched his face for some crack, some softness, but all I saw was restraint, the careful cage he held himself in. "You saved me," I said finally, quieter. "If you wanted me gone, you could have let those shadows take me." His gaze dropped for a heartbeat, his hands curling at his sides. "Don't mistake protection for mercy." The words stung, though I didn't know why. "I don't even know what you are," I whispered. He looked up sharply, his amber eyes glinting. For a heartbeat, I thought he might tell me. That the truth, whatever it was, might finally fall from his lips. But then he shook his head. "You don't want to know." "I do." I pressed. His voice lowered, dark and threaded with warning. "Knowing ties you to me. And once you're tied, there's no undoing it." The night air grew heavier, the silence between us thick. I wanted to run. I wanted to stay. I wanted to scream at him for speaking in riddles. And I wanted to fall into the safety I had felt when his arms pulled me from the shadows. "You've already tied me," I said before I could stop myself. His eyes flashed then, bright, wild, unguarded. His breath caught, and for the first time, he looked unsteady. But just as quickly, the mask returned. His jaw hardened. His gaze darkened. "No," he said firmly. "You don't know me. Not yet, and if you did," his voice roughened, "you would run." Something twisted in my chest, because part of me believed him, and part of me knew I never would. The days passed, and the fractures of truth widened. I saw it in the way wolves in the forest stilled when he was near, their heads lowering as though in recognition. I saw it in the way the child stared into empty space, smiling as though at someone unseen, only to cry when I stepped between them. I saw it in the marks strange, claw-like gouges that appeared on the stones near the well, as though something inhuman had passed through. Pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Still, I couldn't stay away. Every night, I found myself waiting. Sometimes he came. Sometimes he didn't. When he did, our words tangled, half confessions, half warnings. He told me once, "You have more strength than you know." I told him once, "I don't want strength. I want peace." And he looked at me then with such sorrow that my chest ached. But beneath it all, mistrust grew. Because every truth he gave me was wrapped in secrecy. Every kindness, shadowed by warning. I wanted to believe he saved me because I mattered. But a voice deep inside whispered that I was only a piece in something larger. That the child, perhaps, was the true tether. And that I was a fool to think otherwise. The bond between us deepened still. I couldn't deny it. Every look, every brush of silence, tied me tighter. But late one night, as he slipped back into the shadows, I caught sight of something that froze me where I stood. The glint of blood dark, fresh staining his hands. And though I longed to ask, my tongue turned to stone, because I already knew the answer would carve me in two. I tried to keep away. I told myself over and over that it was wrong, dangerous, impossible, that whatever tether had grown between the Alpha and me was a mistake, some trick of loneliness, or gratitude, or fear. I was his maid, nothing more. The child I carried wasn't his. My loyalty wasn't his to claim. And yet, every time I caught the sound of his boots across the wooden floors, or the way his shadow stretched long against the walls at dusk, my pulse betrayed me. My breath faltered. My body leaned forward before my mind could stop it, like a flower turning toward the sun. No matter how scorching its rays might be at night, my dreams no longer felt like mine. They carried his scent, the earth and pine of the forest, the faint edge of smoke from the hearth. Sometimes I dreamed of his eyes, golden and burning, watching me as though they pierced into the marrow of my bones. Other nights the dreams were gentler, his hand brushing mine in the kitchen, his arm shielding me from a storm, his voice low, commanding yet soft when it spoke my name. When morning came, I would wake flushed, unsettled, and furious with myself. I told myself it wasn't real, that he had done nothing to invite this. He was the Alpha. He guarded me. He guarded us. But the child I carried was not his. And still, he looked at me as if it didn't matter. One evening I found myself outside by the laundry line, the crisp air cooling my skin after a long day's work. The woods loomed dark at the edge of the yard, their shadows swallowing the last light. I thought I was alone, but I felt him before I saw him. Too late to be out here alone. His voice came from behind me. I turned, startled, clutching the damp sheet I'd been hanging. He stepped out from the shadows, his figure tall, broad, and carved against the twilight. His presence filled the space like a storm waiting to break. I wanted to retreat, to hide the way my hands trembled, but my feet refused to move. "I'm fine," I whispered. My voice sounded smaller than I intended. He studied me, his eyes glinting in the fading light. "You always say that, even when it's not true." His words landed like a touch against my skin, too intimate, too knowing. I swallowed hard. "Why do you always watch me?" He took a step closer. The distance between us shrank, yet it felt like the world itself had expanded, leaving only him and me. "Because I need to." My breath caught. I looked away, desperate to break the spell. "I'm just a maid. And that child isn't yours." The words tasted like ashes, yet I forced them out. His silence was heavy. I dared to glance back up. His gaze burned, unshaken. "You think I don't know that?" he said softly. "But still, something in me won't let go. Not of you. Not of the child." My heart raced so wildly, I thought he could hear it. I wanted to scream at him to stop, to remind him of the rules that bound us, of the shame that would follow, of the impossibility of what simmered between us. But all I managed was, "You shouldn't." "I shouldn't," he agreed, his voice low, rough. "But I do." The air was thick between us, the night pressing close. My body betrayed me again, leaning toward him before I could command it otherwise. For a terrifying, exquisite moment, I thought he might close the gap, might take my face in his hands and claim what neither of us had the right to. Instead, he stepped back. His control was a wound, sharp and deep. "Go inside," he said. His tone clicked, like the Alpha he was. But his eyes told a different story. I fled, my legs shaky, my heart in ruins. Inside, I collapsed against the kitchen table, pressing my palms to its worn wood as if it could steady me. I told myself I would not think of him again, that I would bury this madness where it belonged. But later that night, The dreams returned. Stronger. Wilder. In them, I was not the maid. I was not the woman carrying another man's child. I was something else entirely, someone fierce. Someone claimed. Someone burning beneath the Alpha's gaze. I woke with his name on my lips, the dawn just breaking. My chest aching with a desire I could neither smother nor deny. And in that silence, I realized the truth that terrified me more than anything else. I didn't want to deny it anymore. The days that followed were restless, filled with a tension I couldn't shake. Every sound in the woods, every knock of wind against the window, seemed sharper, heavier, charged with meaning I couldn't yet grasp. The Alpha had grown quieter too. He carried himself with the same commanding presence, but there was something different about him. Now his gaze lingered longer at the tree line. His ears pricked at the smallest sound. At night, when I passed his study door, I often found it closed. Voices murmuring inside deep, unfamiliar voices, rough like gravel dragged over stone. When I tried to listen, the silence would crash down, as if he knew I was there. The dreams no longer belonged to me alone. They carried shadows now. Not just him, but others' eyes glowing red in the dark, teeth bared, snarls echoing through the trees. The child in my womb stirred restlessly after each one, and I would wake clutching my belly, trembling with the sense that danger was moving closer. One evening, I stood by the kitchen window, scrubbing a pot, when I noticed something strange. A figure lingered at the edge of the woods, half hidden by the trees. At first I thought it was the Alpha himself, watching me as he often did. But then the figure shifted, its outline not quite human. Too tall, too still. The moment I blinked, it was gone. I told myself it was imagination. Nerves playing tricks. Yet when I turned, the Alpha was in the doorway. Silent as stone. He looked out the window, his jaw clenched. "You saw him," he said flatly. My breath stilled. "Who?" His eyes burned gold in the dim light. "Nothing you should worry about." But I did worry. I worried enough that I barely slept, my ears catching every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves. When sleep finally took me, it was not rest but torment. In one dream, I walked through the woods carrying the child in my arms. Shadows followed, whispering my name, whispering maid, thief, liar. Suddenly claws scraped my skin. I turned and the Alpha was there. Bleeding, fighting a pack of creatures with red eyes. I screamed for him, but the forest swallowed us whole. I woke drenched in sweat, heart hammering. And I wasn't alone. A faint sound carried through the window, low, guttural growls, circling the house. The hairs on my arms rose. I slipped from bed, my bare feet cold on the wooden floor, and crept to the window. The moonlight spilled across the yard. There, at the edge of the trees, more than one pair of eyes glowed back at me. Not human, not friendly. Watching, waiting. I stumbled backward, clutching my belly. Before I could scream, the Alpha was there. He moved so swiftly I hadn't heard him enter, his hand firm on my arm. "Don't look out," he growled, pulling the curtain shut. His chest rose and fell like he'd been running, though I hadn't heard a sound. "What are they?" My voice shook. His gaze flicked to my stomach, then back to me. "Enemies." The words sent ice through me. He let go of my arm, his expression carved in stone. "From now on, you don't leave the house after dusk. Do you understand?" I nodded, though my throat felt tight. "Why are they watching us?" "Watching me?" He hesitated, just for a heartbeat, before saying, "Because of me." The room seemed to tilt. His past, whatever it was not buried. It was clawing its way to our door. He turned to leave, But I reached for him, my fingers grazing his sleeve. "Tell me the truth." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, pain, regret, rage. Then it was gone. "Not yet," he said. "But soon." That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like a warning. Every gust of wind against the shutters carried the echo of growls. I thought of the alpha outside, standing guard, his shoulders bearing the weight of a world I didn't understand. The child shifted within me, restless as if sensing what I did. That we were no longer safe. That the shadows were circling closer, daring us to falter. And deep inside, where my fears tangled with my forbidden longing, I knew something with terrible certainty. Whatever hunted him was hunting me too. The air in the house had grown heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The wind rattled the shutters more violently than usual. And even the alpha's guard seemed tense, glancing toward the tree line as though expecting to see eyes glowing from the darkness. I tried to keep busy, cleaning, folding laundry, watching the child sleep. But the unease in my chest was a drumbeat I couldn't silence. Every shadow seemed to flicker with movement. Every rustle in the trees made my stomach twist. And then it happened. I was carrying a tray of food to the kitchen when I heard it, a shrill, echoing scream. My heart stopped. I dropped the tray, the dishes clattering across the floor. The child stirred in the nursery, crying, and I froze, listening. The scream came again, closer this time, and I realized it wasn't in the house. It was coming from outside, from the forest. I ran to the window, peering through the bars of moonlight, and shadow dot figures moved in the trees. Not human. Too tall, too fast, their eyes glowing red, reflecting the moonlight like fire. One of them carried something I couldn't see clearly, but the scream had come from a servant. Someone trapped. My stomach churned, and I wanted to flee, but I was rooted in place. The alpha appeared behind me in an instant, his presence heavy and commanding. "Inside, now. I can't just leave them," I shouted. His hand was firm on my shoulder, almost painfully so. "You will get us all killed if you stay." I wanted to argue, to fight, to scream. But the truth was undeniable. He was right. The night was alive with sound, growls, snarls, the clash of claws against wood, the terrified screams of those caught outside. I pressed myself against the wall, shivering, trying to calm my racing heart. And then I heard it, the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate, too heavy to be one of the servants. Too human to be one of the creatures outside. The alpha's eyes flared gold, his teeth glinting in the moonlight. "Stay back," he warned, moving between me and the door. The door creaked open, and I saw him. Or rather, one of them a dark figure cloaked in shadow. His face hidden. But the eyes. Red, burning, dangerous, unrelenting. "You shouldn't have come," the alpha said, his voice low, deadly. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It merely watched. And the tension in the room became suffocating. I felt the child stir again, restless, sensing the danger that even I could not fully understand. For hours, the night stretched like a taut wire. The alpha moved silently, guarding me, assessing every shadow, every sound. I clutched the journal my mother had left. The words etched in my mind, trying to find some piece of guidance, some clue to this madness. But the truth was simple and terrifying. We were outnumbered, surrounded, and whatever these creatures were, they were patient. I watched as one of the servants, young, brave, foolish, tried to flee the yard, only to be snatched by a shadow and dragged into the darkness. I wanted to scream, to rush out, but the alpha's hand closed around my wrist, cold and iron-strong. "Not yet," he hissed. "Not yet." My stomach turned, my heart breaking, but I obeyed, because I knew that defying him now meant death. Not just for me, but for the child, for everyone under this roof. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time blurred in the chaos. Outside, the creatures prowled, testing boundaries, testing defenses. Inside, the alpha stood like a sentinel, unyielding, fierce, unrelenting. And yet, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't before. Doubt. Concern. A flicker of fear that even he could not completely hide. He moved closer to me, lowering his voice. "You have to understand. This isn't just about me. It's about you. And the child." "I do," I whispered. "But it's so much. I don't know what to do." "You don't have to know," he said, placing a hand over mine. "You just have to trust that I will fight for you. That I will not let them take you." His words were comforting, yet I felt a tremor in my chest. Because deep down, I knew the truth. Trust was fragile. And right now, we were pressed against the edge of a knife. One wrong move, one hesitation, and we would fall. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the main hall. The alpha tensed, moving like a shadow himself toward the sound. My feet followed instinctively, despite every warning in my head. I reached the doorway just as a creature, a wolf larger than any I had ever seen. Its fur black as night, its eyes red like burning coals, leaped into the room. The alpha was ready, his body coiled like a spring, his claws flashing, his teeth bared. I could barely take a step back before the room became a blur of motion, growls, claws, shouts, and the sickening sound of flesh striking wood. And then it was over, just as suddenly as it began. The creature fell, silent, shadows receding. The house held its breath. I looked up at the alpha, my chest heaving. He was breathing hard, his golden eyes wild, alert. But my heart stopped when I noticed the cut across his arm, a shallow one, but enough to bleed. That's when I realized the danger was real. Not some distant threat lurking in the forest. Not some half-whispered prophecy or journal warning. They were here. And whatever came next would not wait for us to be ready. I pressed a hand to my belly, the child kicking sharply as if echoing my own fear. The alpha turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Stay close," he said, voice tight. "No one leaves my sight. Not you, not the child, not anyone." I nodded, though my heart quivered, because I knew the truth. This night was only the beginning. The shadows were closing in, and soon there would be no place left to hide. The night was suffocating, thick with the scent of rain and earth. The air around the house vibrated with tension. The shadow of danger never far, never letting us breathe. Yet somehow, in that tight, electric space, I found myself standing closer to him than I ever had before. He had appeared quietly, as he always did, moving through the kitchen with the silent authority that made my heart lurch. His eyes, amber in the moonlight, held a fire I couldn't look away from. My pulse spiked. The child stirred inside me, restless, almost as if it knew the moment we were teetering on the edge between restraint and surrender. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. Though my voice betrayed me, his lips quirked with a shadow of a smile, but it didn't reach the intensity of his eyes. "I can't leave you," he said simply, stepping closer. "Not now. Not ever." I tried to speak, to remind myself of the dangers, the enemies, the shadows that were waiting. But I couldn't. The sound of his voice, the heat radiating from his body, the brush of his sleeve against mine, it shattered every thought of reason. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. The touch was gentle, deliberate, and my knees nearly gave way beneath me. "You're frightened," he murmured, his breath brushing my skin. "And you should be. But you're stronger than you know." My chest tightened. "I'm not just frightened," I whispered. I'm drawn to you. No matter how wrong it feels, no matter what's happening. I can't. You can," he interrupted softly, yet with an intensity that made the room shrink to the space between us. "You can give in. And maybe, just for this moment, you won't regret it." My breath caught. His eyes held mine, and suddenly I felt every warning in my mind crumble, every rule dissolve. The pull between us was magnetic, undeniable. I could see it in the tension in his shoulders, the slight parting of his lips, the way his gaze lingered on mine with such intensity it hurt to look away. I stepped forward, drawn despite myself. "This is dangerous," I whispered, the words trembling. "With everything with them. We—" His hand cupped my cheek, stopping my words. "I don't care," he said. "Nothing matters except this moment. Except you. Except us." My knees trembled beneath me. I wanted to run, to hide, to remind myself of the bloodline, the prophecy, the danger surrounding us. And yet I couldn't move. My body leaned into him, every nerve alive, every thought consumed by him. He lowered his forehead against mine, close enough that I could feel his heartbeat. "I've wanted this," he admitted quietly, a confession that left my chest aching. "Since the first moment I saw you. Since the first moment you walked into my world, I knew." I barely heard him over the roar of my own pulse. "Knew what?" I whispered, barely audible. "That I'd never let you go," he said, his lips brushing against mine, tantalizing me close enough to ignite every part of me without touching. I leaned in, compelled, desperate. My hands brushed against his chest, feeling the strength beneath his shirt, the power coiled like a spring. His eyes fluttered closed for a heartbeat, and in that pause, the world narrowed to just us, just the warmth between our bodies, the pull of forbidden attraction, the danger hovering outside that suddenly felt distant dot, and then he moved closer, the space between us vanishing. I thought the world would stop, heartbeats, shadows, even the wind seemed to pause. My lips nearly met his. Every instinct screamed, yes, 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 but the moment was interrupted. A deafening crash from the front of the house shattered the fragile spell. The alpha snapped upright, his muscles taut, his amber eyes flaring like molten gold. I stumbled back, heart hammering, breath stolen. "What?" I began, but he silenced me with a look. "They've come," he said, voice tight with controlled fury. "And this time, they won't wait." I turned toward the door, instinct screaming, but he caught my hand. His grip was firm, protective, possessive. "Stay with me," he commanded, and I felt the weight of his authority, the raw need in his eyes. The moment we had shared, the nearness, the almost kiss, the forbiddance pull hung in the air, charged with electricity. It was no longer just desire. It was warning, it was danger, it was longing that refused to be denied. I pressed close, leaning into him despite the threat, despite the fear. "I can't stay away," I admitted, my voice trembling. His lips grazed my temple, a whisper of what could be. "Then don't," he whispered back. The house shuddered with the sound of heavy footsteps in the hall, the shadows twisting, alive with intent. Outside, the creatures circled, waiting for an opening. And I realized with a jolt that our stolen moment of closeness was now under siege. He tightened his hold. moving me behind him as he positioned himself between the threat and us. "Hold still," he ordered, low and dangerous, amber eyes scanning every shadow. I pressed against his back, heart racing. The forbiddance passion between us tangled with terror. The pull toward him had never been stronger, and yet the threat pressing in was real, immediate, unavoidable. And then, from the hallway, a low growl echoed, deep and menacing, followed by a sudden slam of wood against stone. My heart jumped into my throat. The moment we had almost shared our forbiddance closeness, the magnetic draw, the whispered confessions, was cut off violently. I was pressed against him, trembling, aware of every inch of his body, every heartbeat, every breath, and the danger that now invaded the fragile intimacy between us. I realized with a sick, thrilling certainty that this night would not end quietly, not now, not ever. The house shook with the force of the first attack. Shadows surged along the walls, their claws scraping wood and stone. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth, blood, and raw power, a storm that seemed determined to tear us apart. I clung to the Alpha, heart hammering, every instinct screaming to run, to hide, to protect the child growing inside me. But his grip on my wrist was iron strong, unyielding. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice sharp as a blade. "Do not move." I wanted to argue. I wanted to demand answers why they were here, why he had kept secrets, why everything we had shared was so fraught with danger. But the sound of a window shattering above us silenced every word. Figures leapt into the room, red eyes gleaming, snarling with hunger. They weren't human, not fully. Shadows of beasts cloaked in flesh, their claws flashing, their snarls vibrating through the floor. My stomach lurched. The Alpha moved with a speed I could hardly track, a predator in his own right, cutting a path through the attackers with calculated, lethal precision. I wanted to help. I wanted to fight. But my hands were useless against them. I felt powerless, exposed, terrified. And then I saw it. One of the creatures, a massive, dark figure with fangs, bared, charged straight for me. My breath caught, frozen with terror. Before I could scream, the Alpha's body slammed into mine, knocking me aside. Pain lanced through my back, and the world became a blur of movement, growls, and his golden eyes locked on mine for the briefest moment. "I won't let them touch you," he hissed. A promise and a threat all in one. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to hold on to that magnetic pull, the forbiddance closeness we had shared the night before. But as he threw himself into the battle, every doubt I had been holding at bay surged forward. Why had he lied to me? Why had he kept the truth of my bloodline from me? Why did he insist on guarding me while exposing me to this danger? The fight tore through the house like a hurricane. Furniture splintered, dishes shattered, and the walls themselves seemed to shudder under the weight of claws and teeth. I tried to stay hidden, but fear made me reckless. I ran toward a fallen servant, dragging them behind a shattered table. When a shadow lunged at me again, the Alpha intercepted, but this time it was different. He struck with precision. Yes, but there was a distance in his eyes, a sharpness that hurt more than any claw could. "Stay away," he shouted, and the command was full of anger, but it cut me deeper than any wound. I froze, confusion and hurt colliding. His need to protect me was real, but so was the wedge that grew between us in that moment. I realized something that made my stomach drop. Even now, in the heart of danger, even now when life and death swirled around us, he didn't fully trust me. And maybe I didn't fully trust him either. Minutes or hours passed. Time became meaningless as the battle raged around us. I found myself cornered in the hallway, the child kicking sharply within me, responding to the chaos. I pressed myself against the wall, listening to the growls and roars, trying to summon courage. Then he appeared. The alpha, bloodied but unbowed, moving toward me with a lethal grace. Relief surged in me, but it was fleeting. His eyes weren't soft. They weren't comforting. They were calculating, tense, wary. "You need to stay back," he said, voice cold. "If you interfere again, you'll get yourself killed." I opened my mouth, but no words came, because even in the heat of the fight, even as my heart ached to reach for him, I understood. He had drawn a line, and I was on the other side of it. The final blow came unexpectedly. A massive shadow, larger than any I had seen, burst through the kitchen, its claws tearing the ceiling apart. The alpha roared, lunging forward, and in that instant, a smaller figure, one of the attackers, swooped toward me. I screamed. The child inside me kicked violently, and the alpha, fighting for his life, had no way to reach me. Someone or something shoved me into the hall, the force sending me sprawling to the floor. Pain radiated through my back, and I saw the alpha in the distance, grappling with the dark figure, his amber eyes scanning, searching. I realized then, with a crushing weight, that I was utterly alone. When the chaos finally subsided, the house lay in ruins. Shadows had receded for now, leaving a silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. The child was safe, miraculously, but the alpha was gone. I ran through the halls, calling his name. "Alpha, where are you?" No answer. Panic surged. My pulse raced, tears stinging my eyes. He had been my anchor, my shield, the one constant in this nightmare, and now he was gone. I stumbled into the kitchen, collapsing to my knees. The remnants of the battle were everywhere. Broken furniture, claw marks gouged into the wood, shards of glass glittering in the dim moonlight. And then I saw it. A trail of blood leading toward the forest. My stomach dropped. He had gone after them, alone. And I realized with a shattering clarity what it meant. I was powerless. I was alone, and my trust, the fragile bond we had been building, the forbidden closeness we had shared, had been torn to pieces in the chaos. I pressed a trembling hand to my chest, the child kicking violently as if responding to my despair. My heart ached in a way I hadn't thought possible, and a single, terrifying thought filled me. He might not come back. I stumbled through the wreckage of the house, my hands raw from clutching shattered furniture and splintered wood. The moonlight spilled unevenly through broken windows, casting jagged shadows that seemed alive, reaching for me. Every step made my pulse spike. Every sound in the night twisted my stomach into knots. The alpha was gone. The thought hammered in my chest, relentless. He had gone after them, after the creatures that had attacked us and left me behind, alone, vulnerable, frightened beyond measure. I pressed a trembling hand to my belly, feeling the child shift sharply. A rush of fear swept over me. If something happened to me, if I faltered, if I failed, the child would be caught in this nightmare. The weight of it pressed down harder than the chaos outside. I forced myself to move. I couldn't stay here. The shadows were no longer just outside. They were crawling inside my mind, whispering doubts, filling every corner with despair. I remembered my mother's journal, the warnings, the prophecies, the bloodline I had tried to ignore. The maid will be marked, though she knows it not. My blood, my child, the alpha, all entangled in a web I barely understood. A shiver ran down my spine. I could hear faint sounds, the soft rustle of wings or claws against wood, the faint whispers of the night. The attackers had not left. They were hunting. They were patient. And now I was prey. I moved toward the forest, drawn by some instinct I didn't fully understand. Fear burned in my veins, but alongside it, a stubborn thread of defiance. I wouldn't give up. I couldn't. Not for myself. Not for the child. Not for the Alpha. Even if he wasn't here. The forest loomed like a wall of black teeth, the trees twisting toward the sky, their limbs skeletal against the moon. Each step into the darkness made the world shrink, pressing in, suffocating. The wind whispered around me, carrying scents of wet leaves, moss, and something unnatural. A low growl echoed from deeper within, sending ice through my veins. My feet faltered. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to hide. But the child inside me kicked again, sharp and urgent, and I realized I couldn't run from this. Not anymore. I forced myself forward, each step a battle against terror. The shadows seemed to move with me, pressing closer, testing my resolve. I stumbled over roots, scraped my hands on bark, but I refused to stop. Hours or maybe minutes passed. Time had no shape here. The forest became a labyrinth of black shapes and whispers. And then I saw it. A faint glow in the distance. A lantern? A fire? Or something else entirely. My heart leapt. Hope flickered, fragile and bright, like the first star of the evening. I hurried toward it, pushing past the fear, the exhaustion, the trembling in my legs. When I reached the source, I found a small clearing. In the center lay a strange symbol carved into the earth, glowing faintly with a blue light. I crouched, my fingers brushing the mark. It pulsed under my touch, warm and alive, as if responding to me. A whisper carried on the wind, faint but clear. Follow the bloodline. Follow the child. The key remains. I gasped, staggering backward. My mother's words. The prophecy. The child was not just a burden or a blessing. It was a beacon, a key. Somehow, somewhere, answers awaited. And though I was still terrified, alone and vulnerable, I felt the faintest spark of hope ignite. Suddenly, movement in the shadows caught my eye. I froze. A figure stepped forward, tall and cloaked, features obscured. But the presence, it wasn't hostile. Not yet. The air around them thrummed with a quiet, dangerous power, and I instinctively pressed myself against a tree, unsure whether to flee or speak. The figure held out a hand, slow and deliberate. "You're marked," a voice said, soft, measured, ancient. "That the choice is yours. Step forward, or be consumed by fear." The words reverberated inside me. Step forward. Fight, or hide and let the darkness swallow me. I swallowed hard, placing a hand on my belly. The child stirred again, sharp, insistent. And in that moment, clarity broke through the fear. I would not give in. I would not let them, the shadows, or even the uncertainty of my own bloodline defeat me. I nodded to the figure, my voice trembling but firm. "I'll step forward. I'll fight." The figure inclined their head, just slightly, and stepped back into the shadows. "Then follow the path. The key is closer than you think. But beware. The Alpha's choice may not align with yours." I stood alone in the clearing, heart pounding, breath ragged. The glow of the symbol faded, leaving only the moon and the forest around me. Danger pressed in from all sides. I was vulnerable, exhausted, terrified. And yet, the spark of hope burned brighter than ever. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with shadows and secrets. But for the first time, I knew I had a choice. I would fight for the truth. I would fight for the child. I would fight for him. And in that choice, somewhere deep in the darkness, I felt the faintest promise. We were not yet defeated. The forest pressed in around me. Every tree a sentinel, every rustle a potential threat. My legs ached from hours of running, stumbling and hiding. The child inside me shifted sharply with each step, as though urging me forward. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I had to keep moving. The cryptic words from the glowing symbol pulsed in my mind. Follow the bloodline. Follow the child. The key remains dot. And then, ahead, a flicker of movement caught my eye. My heart stopped. He was there, the Alpha, battle-worn and bloodied, standing beneath the silver glow of the moon, eyes blazing gold. His figure was tense, every muscle coiled, yet the moment he saw me, something shifted. Relief, fury, desire all wrapped into a single, dangerous intensity. I froze. Don't move, he said, voice low, commanding, but not angry this time. Just taut, controlled. The pull between us hit me like a physical blow, and I felt my knees weaken. I didn't know where to go, I whispered, my voice barely audible. His eyes softened for just a fraction of a second. I thought I'd lost you, he admitted, the words rough and jagged, as if each one cost him something he hadn't realized he was giving away. We stood there, inches apart, the silence between us loud enough to hear our own hearts pounding. Every instinct screamed to reach for him, to throw myself into his arms. But the wedge of mistrust remained, carved deep by the chaos of the night. You left, I said finally, my voice shaking. During the fight, you left me alone. His jaw tightened. I did what I had to. I was forced to split my attention. You were too important to risk, and his voice faltered. I made a choice. I swallowed hard, the sting of betrayal sharp, but beneath it, a tether of something stronger, something magnetic, unyielding, held me rooted to him. You're not just my protector, I said softly, meeting his gaze. You're the reason I keep going, even when I'm terrified. His amber eyes darkened, flaring with emotion I couldn't name. And you're the reason I stay alive, he said quietly. Every fight I take, every enemy I face, it's for you, for the child, for us. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to throw myself into his arms and never look back. But the memory of being alone, vulnerable, terrified, it made me hesitate. He stepped closer, bridging the space between us until I could feel the heat of his body. I know you don't trust me fully, he admitted, his hand brushing a strand of hair from my face. And maybe you never will. But I need you to trust me now. Just for this moment. I met his gaze, searching for any hint of deception, any shadow that could hide a lie. But all I saw was raw, unfiltered intensity, desire, protection, love, and the dangerous pull that had kept me tethered to him from the beginning. I can try, I whispered, the words barely audible, trembling. That's all I ask, he said, his lips hovering near mine, so close I could feel his breath. We don't have forever, but we have now, and I won't let you face this alone again. A soft breeze swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves, carrying a scent of rain and earth. It felt like the world had shrunk to just us. And yet the danger was never far. Shadows lurked just beyond the edge of the moonlight. I took a shaky step closer, letting my hand brush against his chest. I don't want to be alone anymore, I admitted, the truth spilling from my lips in a rush. Not with the child, not with you, not with any of it. His fingers curled around mine, holding them tight, grounding me. Then you won't be, he said. Not while I breathe. Not while I can fight. Not while you're mine to protect. The word mine lingered in the air, possessive yet protective, igniting something deep inside me, a dangerous, forbidden pull that made the fear of the night fade just enough to let desire through. I pressed closer, my forehead resting against his. "We need a plan," I murmured. "We can't just survive. We have to fight, together." He nodded, eyes blazing with determination. "Together," he echoed. "No one touches you. No one touches the child. And no one breaks us apart again." For a heartbeat, I allowed myself to believe him, to feel the spark of hope that had been missing for so long. The danger wasn't gone. The enemies weren't defeated. But for the first time in hours, maybe days, I felt anchored. "I vow," I said softly, voice trembling, "that I will not run. Not from fear. Not from danger. Not from you." His lips brushed my temple. A whisper of a kiss. "A promise. And I vow to protect you, always," he said. "No matter the cost. Even if it destroys me." The moment was fragile, suspended between the fear of what had come and the uncertainty of what was still to come. Shadows pressed in around the clearing, waiting, watching. But for now, in this breath, this heartbeat, we had found each other again. A secret pact, forged in the ruins of chaos and terror, held us together. Neither fear nor betrayal, nor darkness could undo what had been reignited. The pull between us was undeniable, dangerous, and irrevocable. And though the forest whispered warnings and the night still held countless threats, I knew one truth with certainty. We would face what came next together. The forest was silent now. Eerily so, as though it knew the storm that was about to break. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, the branches frozen in anticipation. I walked beside the Alpha, our hands brushing occasionally, fingers entwining when fear threatened to overtake us. Each step forward carried the weight of everything we had survived, and everything we had lost. He hadn't spoken much since our reunion, and I didn't press him. Words were unnecessary. We both knew the danger we faced. The ultimate enemy, the one behind the attacks, the shadows, the chaos was waiting. Somewhere in the depths of the forest, in a place where the moonlight barely reached, the final hunt had already begun. I could feel it in my bones. This was more than a confrontation. It was destiny. Bloodlines and prophecies tangled with love and vengeance, pulling us toward a moment that would define everything. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly, his amber eyes scanning the darkness. I swallowed hard, hand tightening around his. "I have to be." He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of the truth we both carried. Fear lingered at the edges of my mind, but it was tempered by the bond we had reforged, the pact we had made. And yet, even with him beside me, a part of me trembled. The enemy we faced was not just a creature of flesh and claws. It was cunning, ancient, and merciless. The forest opened into a wide clearing, bathed in silver light. Shadows clung to the edges, twisting unnaturally. And there, at the center, stood the figure we had both feared, taller than any human, cloaked in darkness that seemed to breathe, eyes glowing red, a predator shaped from nightmares. It watched us approach, waiting, calculating. The Alpha stepped forward, his presence radiating power and authority. Every muscle coiled like a spring. I stayed close, heart pounding, knowing the child inside me felt the tension too. Kicking sharply, restless. "You've come far," the enemy said, voice smooth, echoing unnaturally across the clearing. "Farther than I expected, and I'll go further," the Alpha replied, voice low, dangerous. "You will not touch her. You will not touch the child." A laugh, cold and cruel, rolled through the clearing. Ah, the alpha and his maid. How touching. But you cannot protect them forever. My stomach twisted. The words weren't just a threat. They were a promise of the trial ahead. And the alpha's jaw tightened as he advanced, claws flexing, teeth bared. I glanced at him, searching for the vulnerability we had shared during our reunion, the warmth, the softness. It was still there, beneath the fury, beneath the battle stance. And I realized that my own courage had to rise to meet his. I wasn't just following him, I was fighting with him. The enemy struck first. A shadow surged forward, moving faster than the eye could track. The alpha leapt, intercepting the attack. And the world became a blur of motion. Claws and teeth, growls and shouts. The earth shaking beneath the force of the collision. I stumbled back, pressed against a tree, heart racing, but I refused to move away entirely. I could not let fear control me. I whispered to the child within me, willing it to stay calm, to be still. And for a moment, the forest seemed to acknowledge me, the shadows holding their breath. The alpha fought like a force of nature, every movement precise, every strike lethal. Yet the enemy was unlike anything we had faced before. It adapted, anticipated, and countered with cunning that made my stomach twist. I realized then that this was more than a fight, it was a test. Of strength, of loyalty, of love. I wanted to reach him, to throw myself into his side, but instinct told me to stay back. And yet, the pull between us, the bond we had reforged, made it impossible to simply watch. I found a fallen branch and gripped it like a weapon, heart hammering, knowing I might have to act. The battle escalated, the clearing trembling with every impact. The alpha roared, a sound that seemed to shake the stars themselves, and I felt the pull of his fury, his desire to protect, his love for me and the child. It burned through the fear in me, setting my own determination alight. The enemy faltered just for a heartbeat, and I saw it. The red eyes flickered with recognition, a hint of caution. And in that instant, I knew the key wasn't just strength, it was the bond, the connection, the bloodline we carried. The alpha turned toward me, amber eyes locking onto mine. His expression was fierce, but underneath, there was something else. Trust, hope, and a silent command. Step forward. I swallowed hard, stepping into the moonlight, feeling the child shift inside me as if agreeing. "We're not afraid," I said, voice steady despite the terror gripping me. "We fight together." The alpha's lips curved into a fierce, almost feral smile. "Then let this end," he said. And in that single simple statement I understood. The final hunt was upon us, but the enemy surged again. Shadows coiling, claws reaching, but now we moved as one. The alpha and I, bound by trust, by passion, by destiny, faced the creature together. Every strike, every dodge, every motion was synchronized, a dance of power and purpose. The clearing seemed to shrink around us, the night holding its breath as predator and protector collided. The child kicked sharply, and I realized with awe that even in the heart of danger, life persisted, a quiet but powerful reminder of why we fought. And then, just as the enemy lunged for what could have been a fatal strike, the alpha roared, and a burst of energy, something primal, something ancient erupted from him, throwing the enemy back, giving us a sliver of space. I took that space, gripping the alpha's hand, and together we moved forward, toward the unknown, toward the trial that awaited. I didn't know if we would survive. I didn't know if we would win. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I would not walk this path alone. As we advanced, the forest seemed to darken, the shadows pressing in, testing us at every step. I glanced at the alpha, battle scars visible, exhaustion and determination carved into his features. He caught my gaze and nodded a silent vow that whatever came next, we would face it together. And then the clearing ended. Before us stretched a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the moon, the trees, the world itself. A hollow, suffocating abyss. "This is it," the alpha said, voice low, almost reverent. "The heart of the hunt. The final trial." I swallowed hard, hand tightening around his. Fear clawed at my chest, but alongside it burned the spark of hope, the tether of love, and the strength of the child within me. I stepped forward into the abyss. The abyss swallowed us whole. Darkness pressed against my skin like a living thing, heavy and suffocating, yet I kept moving, clinging to the alpha's hand. The child inside me shifted, restless, as if sensing the gravity of what lay ahead. My pulse thundered in my ears, a frantic drumbeat against the silence that had replaced the forest. We emerged into a clearing unlike any I had ever seen. The trees were twisted, blackened, their roots curling like serpents reaching for the sky. Shadows pooled in impossible corners, and the air vibrated with a power so ancient and raw that it stole my breath. In the center, the ultimate enemy waited. It had grown larger, more monstrous, as though feeding on the fear and chaos surrounding it. Red eyes glowed like coals, and its form shimmered, shifting between shadows and something almost human but grotesque. I felt my stomach tighten, the child kicking sharply as if warning me. The alpha's presence beside me was a tether. Every muscle coiled, every sinew taut. His amber eyes glowed brighter than ever, fixed on the enemy. "Stay close," he warned, voice low but firm. "Whatever happens, do not step away." I nodded, though my hands shook. Fear pressed against every thought, every instinct screaming to flee. And yet, alongside it burned determination. I could not run, not now, not ever. The enemy roared, a sound that split the air, shaking the ground beneath our feet. Shadows surged forward, reaching, snapping, trying to swallow us whole. The alpha moved first, lunging into the fray with feral precision. Every strike he landed seemed to ripple with a force that bent reality, pushing the darkness back, at least momentarily. I tried to stay behind him, but instinct made me act. Shadows lunged at me, and I caught one with a fallen branch, striking blindly. The enemy hissed, a sound that sent chills down my spine, and I realized that even I, just a maid, just a mother, just a human, could make a difference. The alpha glanced at me, eyes sharp but not unkind. "Now," he commanded, and in that instant, everything slowed, every moment crystallizing into unbearable clarity. The enemy turned, sensing our strategy. Its red eyes locked onto the child, and my heart lurched. I screamed, stepping in front instinctively, ready to sacrifice everything. The alpha roared, leaping between us, claws extended, a golden blaze of power erupting from him. The clash was cataclysmic. Shadows exploded outward, trees splintered, the ground trembled. I felt the force of it like waves through my chest, knocking me off balance. Yet I stood, gripping the alpha's hand, feeling the heat of his body, the raw strength radiating through him. He fought not just for himself, but for me, for the child, for everything we had struggled to protect. And then came the choice. The enemy advanced with a speed that made my vision blur. One of its attacks was aimed directly at the child. I froze, frozen by terror, and the alpha barked a warning. But it was too late. I realized, with a cold certainty, that the only way to protect the child, and perhaps save the alpha, was to step forward, to draw the enemy's attention onto myself. My heart screamed against the idea, but instinct and love overrode fear. I whispered, but words failed. My hand brushed the child's belly, feeling life thrumming beneath my fingers. And I stepped to the enemy's path. It lunged. The world exploded. Pain seared through me, bright and white, but I didn't fall. Somehow I twisted, redirected the attack, and the enemy's momentum carried it past me into the Alpha. He roared in surprise and fury, claws lashing and fore. The first time I saw the fear flash in his eyes, not for himself, but for me. We battled as one then, no hesitation, no faltering. The bond between us, forged through fear, love, and survival, became a weapon. Every strike, every movement, every heartbeat sensed. Shadows faltered, wavered, and finally, the enemy recoiled, staggering. And in that moment, I understood the truth of the prophecy. It wasn't just the Alpha, and it wasn't just me. It was both of us. The child, the bond, the bloodline. Together, we were stronger than the darkness could ever hope to be. The enemy hissed, claws flailing, red eyes blazing, but it was weakening. The Alpha's amber gaze met mine, unspoken understanding passing between us. I stepped forward, channeling every ounce of courage and determination into the final strike. The enemy shrieked, the shadows twisting violently around us, and then it was gone.